Okay, so a follow-up on the last video, I was talking about insecurity and emotional intensity in adolescence. So a few things to take from this, and each point from that video is something I'm gonna lengthen out in subsequent videos here. The emotional imbalance that teenagers and adolescents go through, it makes them very susceptible to the feeling of being overwhelmed and being literally overwhelmed. This is an important thing for adults to understand. And that is part of the reason why mood disorders are most common in adolescence than any other age group, especially depression. And there can be other types of mood disorders, maybe having to do with anger and anxiety and other things. But depression is common amongst adolescents, and depression is often something that is a way of the mind reconciling, the mind shutting down because it's feeling overwhelmed. So adolescents, high school age adolescents, they have the highest rates in America. They have the highest rates of depression of any age group. Of any other age group. Even late stage adolescents, they have the highest rates of depression of any group other than their younger counterparts in adolescence. For high school age adolescents, 1 in 5 females experiences diagnosable depression in America. 1 in 5 adolescent females. And a young person especially who is facing a lot of different conflicting pressures that they can't reconcile and that they're not able to satisfy, especially if they are someone who has the disposition of wanting people to be pleased with them and wanting to please other people. So it's very common for our young people these days to be experiencing pressures that from different places that conflict with one another. And that's more true in the hypermedia age, which I've talked about in other videos on here, than in previous ages because of that. There's an element too where that's more true for kids who are multicultural in their background, and that can be very common for the children of immigrants. Now, so there is an aspect to which experiencing mental illness, especially mood disorders, is developmental for adolescents. Now, something about that for adults, that doesn't mean that the adolescent's experiences of that should be dismissed as something that they're just going to grow out of it. So there's no need to really worry about it. And that type of tendency amongst adults, which can happen that way in the middle of adolescence, where things they're going through are dismissed as something, well, this is just the age they're at and they're going to grow out of it. And it also commonly something adults do and parents do, some parents, at the beginning of adolescence. You see this a lot with parents at the beginning of high school, even middle school. They'll say to themselves, well, my child's growing up now. They have to start learning how to be an adult. So I'm just going to leave them. I'm going to let them take care of themselves, manage all their own schoolwork, manage everything going on, because they got to figure it out themselves. These types of reasonings by adults that amounts to a dismissal of responsibility on the side of adults. And in reality, it is something that is an emotional reconciliation on the parts of the adults because of the insecurities that teenagers and adolescents are triggering in them. And adults are very sensitive to adolescents. And this gets to an issue where adults will commonly project, and oftentimes without realizing it. But adults will oftentimes project their own insecurities onto young people. And that can cause young people to manifest behaviors that the adults in turn are very, very displeased with. And this is a point that I would say within the Muslim community, there really has to be some reconciliation going on with this particular issue, which I'll talk more about. And not just for it's something important not just for the current adults with children to understand, but even the young people themselves. This is something for you to understand about things that have gone on in your life, and also so you can begin the proper learning to prepare yourself to nurture older people when you're younger, because a lot of these like major issues, resolving them is generational in its nature. It's generational in its nature. And forming a constructive understanding of young people and the proper person-to-person interactions that are going to help guide them in a healthy way, in a way that we all want them to be raised, is foundational to reconciling these things.